Hi, are you an Indian exporter exporting goods abroad and you're wondering what's the best way to get your pre-shipment credit? Is it packing credit? Is it PCFC, packing credit in foreign currency? Or is it just cash credit? You know, this is something that a lot of people I see get confused with. They end up using cash credit for their export business. So how do we go about this? If you have this question, this is the right video. I am Madhu here. I've been a financial consultant and advisor for the last 15 years. So let me get you straight into the meat of this one. If you're an exporter, you're either using EPC, export packing credit, or PCFC, packing credit in foreign currency. Never use cash credit or OD limits for exports. If you are purchasing raw materials and for manufacturing something and then exporting it, do not use CC limits. The reason is very simple. You're getting CC at a 9%, 10% interest rate, whereas the Indian government provides subsidies as an exporter through PC or PCFC. So the difference in interest rate is almost 5% when you use packing credit compared to a cash credit limit. So that's achieved through subvention and various other mechanisms. So let's jump into what is PC and what is PCFC. Which one should you use between those two? So what is the difference between packing credit, export packing credit, EPC, and packing credit in foreign currency? There are a couple of key main differences. The first one is, what is your liability? So when you are taking an EPC loan, so what the bank does is it gives you the money in Indian currency and you will have to repay them back in Indian currency whenever you get the money from your buyer or client. So you can only repay it when the foreign exchange comes back to your account, but you will repay it back in rupees still. So the liability is still in rupees. So that is the main thing about EPC. So in PCFC, the bank is going to be giving you a loan, approving a loan in a foreign currency. It could be dollars, it could be yen, it could be British pound, whatever it might be. But the loan is going to be approved based on a value in a foreign currency. But end of the day, you're going to be paying your suppliers locally, so you're going to be spending in rupees. So they will convert the dollars or British pounds in Indian rupees and give that amount. So the approval, let's say, is $1 million. They will convert it into 75 rupees times the million and issue 7.5 crores worth of Indian rupees. Whereas in EPC, you would get 7.5 crores directly, whereas they are converting it into rupees from dollars. So when you're repaying, your liability is going to be in dollars. So your liability at the end of the PC term, say 180 days, is going to be $1 million, not 7.5 crores. So the value of the currency, the foreign currency might have fluctuated. So it might not necessarily be 7.5 crores liability when the term expires, when you are about to repay your packing credit with PCFC. So that's a key difference to remember between PC and PCFC. Your liabilities in the foreign currency in PCFC, whereas in PC it is in rupees. The second thing is actually about the interest rate. So we talked about how as an exporter, the government subsidizes the interest rate so that you are on par with some of the other countries where interest rates are really, really low. And that's a great thing, right? So what happens in typical domestic manufacturer who is paying 8, 9, 10%, you are going to be paying 5% lower when you take packing credit EPC. This is great. Always use this. So in EPC, you're going to pay 5% or so lower than the typical rate. Whereas in PCFC, the calculation is slightly different, right? It's going to be usually LIBOR plus some spread. So right now the LIBOR is somewhere around 1% or so, then the spread could be 2%. So you're probably paying something like 3%. So PCFC for most purposes will be slightly cheaper in terms of your debt servicing cost compared to packing credit. That said, as I said earlier, you have to pay some conversion charge for converting the foreign currency into Indian rupees. So end of the day, net, it is probably a wash. They both will cost you the same. So these are the two key differences between PC and PCFC. Now let's look at how this whole process works. What's the mechanism? How do we apply? How do we get this loan? And when do we have to repay it? So you have a PC or a PCFC limit approved initially from your bank or the consortium of banks based on your turnover, your past turnover. And when you get an export order and you have to start working on it, then you give the documents to the bank and get a PC limit approved for that particular export order. So once you get that approved and then the bank disburses the amount, typically you have 180 days to repay the loan. As I said earlier, this is not something you can pay with local currency. You can only pay it back with the foreign exchange you receive back from the buyer. So this is something important because the RBI wants you to use the foreign exchange for the value of the goods you have exported to pay back this loan. This is an export incentive scheme, subsidy scheme. So it is only for exporters who get back the money in foreign exchange. And the repayment period is 180 days. But a lot of times the banks might say it's 120, 150 days, and then they remind it as a kind of like a grace period or an overdue period, okay? But if you have a good relationship with the banks, you can go talk to them. If you have been a loyal customer and have that relationship, usually you will need an approval at the DGM level to get that extended, the OD period extended almost up to a year, okay? So one other thing to remember is when you are taking a PC loan, export packing credit loan, that is an opportunity for you to make money. Because let's say you've taken the loan in rupees, but you're going to get the money back in dollars or some other foreign currency. So you can hedge it or book a forward or a future contract, right? So, and always all of these times, these are in contango, which means let's say the dollar rate is now 73, and that is the price that you are getting as loan from the bank, and you have to repay it after 6 months. So when you hedge it, you're going to get something like 75 rupees, right? So that 2 rupees could potentially be a profit when you hedge or take a forward contract to repay that loan back in 6 months. Okay, so this could be a beneficial thing for you if you take EPC compared to PCFC.